Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. A roller coaster ride on Dalal Street. The Sensex and the Nifty end a volatile session with marginal losses. Mid caps outperformed, small caps fare even better. Israeli soldiers enter southern Lebanon hours after its army announced a limited ground operation against Hezbollah. Israel warns Lebanese citizens against traveling in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah says it has targeted Israeli troops across the border. Explosions are heard in Tel Aviv.
No reason why Kotak shouldn't be within the top 3 private sector banks. And I'm talking not only of the bank, I'm talking about our subs. Where our subs are within the top 5.
Kotak Mahindra Bank CEO Ashok Vaswani is aiming to be among the top 3 private lenders by 2030. He sets out a mandate of transforming for scale, says bank has used RBI restrictions as an opportunity to leapfrog and make systems resilient. That's an exclusive. The Reserve Bank warns gold loan financiers of regulatory action after spotting several irregular practices. The regulator gives lenders 3 months to set things in order. Bajaj Auto and TVS Motor report strong sales growth in September. Bajaj closes the gap with Ola Electric in the electric scooter race. Car sales throw up a mixed bag. Tata Motors reports a 9% decline. M&M's SUV sales up 24%. 40 constituencies in Jammu and Kashmir vote in the final phase of the assembly elections. 44% voter turnout. As of 1 p.m., 415 candidates are in the fray and results will be declared on the 8th of October. The Supreme Court reserves its judgment on the pleas challenging the weaponization of bulldozer demolition by state governments. Hints at laying down guidelines that will be applicable to all communities across India. As always, let's start with the market action. Wild swings on Dalal Street today as the Sensex and the Nifty finally closed a volatile session, but with marginal losses. The Sensex was down just about 30 points. The Nifty absolutely flat, just about in the red. The mid-cap index closed about 200 points higher, and it was a 150-point gain there as far as the Nifty small cap was concerned. Clearly, that outperformance was visible today. Prashant is standing by now to wrap up the market action for us. Volatile, Prashant, but the flat close.
It was a quiet handover from Wall Street, and it was expected to be a quiet session, largely because we've got a midweek holiday, the 2nd of October holiday tomorrow. So things started on a very quiet note, and they ended on a very quiet note as well. A broader market, not quiet at all, very vibrant screen once again. But I'll start with the basic indices. The Nifty didn't do very much at all. The Bank Nifty, again, very quiet. The small cap index did much better, and that showed up in broader markets. The index was up about 0.75% more, and mid caps also outperformed the large caps today. Large cap Nifty, I'll start with what was up. Kotak Mahindra was the top gainer. Mahindra itself did very well. Britannia, Adani Enterprises, Infosys, and Kotak Mahindra Bank were some of the other names which did well. Actually, the IT services index was the top performing sector today. IndusInd Bank, ONGC, and Bajaj Auto were the pullbacks that you basically had today. In the broader market, big volume-led gains once again. Market advanced decline, I mean, it was positively skewed, but not as big as what the volume-led gainers list really showed. So Nalco was a big mover. There was Paytm, which is now 700 plus easy. BSE was a big mover today. K Fintech, PB Fintech. There was Polycap, which is basically another 5%. Big moves in the last 5 days. Saregama reversed from the morning. Olectra Green Tech, Kaplan Point, Wellspun Living, 5-star. There was VMart, Orient Cements, EPAC Durables, and Sign DLM, just to name a few of the big volume-led gains today. What was under pressure? Sterling Solar Wilson was down another 3% today. Muthoot and Manappuram, the gold financiers after the RBI advisory. And there was a Jubilant Foodworks, which lost a little bit at the margin as well. So quiet overall, but bubbling beneath the surface with small caps more than anything else doing bulk of the heavy lifting. Back to you.
Right, Prashant, many thanks for joining us. That was the market action for you. But from stocks, let's head to commodities where geopolitical tensions continue to weigh on sentiment. Brent crude prices, in fact, now dropping below $70 a barrel after Israel launched a ground invasion of Lebanon. The rising tensions in the region could impact supply. Crude oil prices are down 17% in the last 3 months. Meanwhile, gold prices remain steady around record levels. In fact, gold prices have gained 13% since July, clocking the best quarterly gain in over 3 years. The big international story that we continue to track this evening: Israel has invaded Lebanon, significantly ramping up its military offensive against Hezbollah. The Netanyahu government has called it a limited military operation, saying that it will do whatever it takes to avoid the 7th October-style attacks. Reports suggest that Israeli forces fired flares into the sky amidst heavy shelling as they were entering the region. Soldiers in military vehicles were seen assembling around the Israel-Lebanon border several hours before the incursions began. The Israeli military launched more airstrikes targeting southern Beirut as well. Several neighborhoods were severely damaged in the bombing. The Israeli army had ordered people to evacuate prior to the attack. According to Lebanese health ministry, at least 95 people have been killed in the last 24 hours. Lebanon's prime minister has urged the UN to provide aid for the $1 million for the 1 million who were displaced by the attack. Israel has claimed that Houthis, the Yemen-based militant group, targeted the Israeli army bases in Tel Aviv. Israel claimed to have retaliated with drone strikes. Explosions were heard around the region. However, there have been no reports of casualties or damages so far.
Along Israel's northern border, against the threat Hezbollah poses to civilians in northern Israel. These localized ground raids will target Hezbollah strongholds that threaten Israeli towns, kibbutzim, and communities along our border.
Meanwhile, Israel continues its military operations in Gaza. The IDF has struck a refugee camp in central Gaza, killing at least 13 people, 7 of them children. Israeli forces also carried out military raids in Palestine's West Bank. Reports say that a 25-year-old man was shot and arrests were carried out in the region. And here's the latest in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Ukraine has said that at least 7 people were killed after Russian forces struck a marketplace in Kherson, located in the country's eastern region. Russia has claimed that it has captured a village in the eastern front line in what comes as a sign that Kremlin will ramp up its war efforts. Russia stated it will increase its defense spending by 25% to 13.5 trillion rubles in 2025. This will be the highest defense spending by Russia to date. From geopolitics to central banks, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has hinted at more rate cuts, adding that the Fed is not in a hurry. Addressing the media, Powell said that the central bank plans to proceed cautiously, adding that the Fed would consider 2 more rate cuts this year if economic conditions meet expectations, while also adding that the Fed is not on any preset course.
We will do what it takes in terms of the speed with which we move. But if you look at where we were 2 weeks ago, coming up on 3 weeks ago, I guess, when we wrote down our SEPs and made our decision, it was a situation where people were thinking, the bulk of the committee was at 75 or 100 basis points, and the votes were on 50, and that would mean 2 more cuts. It wouldn't mean more 50s. Now, of course, that'll depend on the data, but ultimately that's what the baseline is. If the economy performs as expected, then that would mean 2 more cuts this year. A total of 50 more.
Well, that's the U.S. Fed chair. Let's talk about the Reserve Bank back home. Former central bank governor C. Rangarajan believes the RBI could be cautious and cut rates by 25 basis points instead of a big 50 basis point cut. Speaking with my colleague Parikshit, Rangarajan said inflation is on the decline and the Reserve Bank has room to ease rates.
2 6-week periods during which the inflation rate has fallen, that can give a lead to cut the repo rate. Choice is between 25 basis points and 50 basis points. If you want to be cautious, we can cut 25 and store something for the next time. Or we can take front-loaded cut of deeper things.
Well, that's the former RBI Governor C. Rangarajan. The big newsmaker of the day, Kotak Mahindra Bank's new CEO, Ashok Vaswani, says that he sees no reason why the bank shouldn't be among India's top 3 private banks. In an exclusive conversation with me, Vaswani said the bank should be in the number 3 position, if not ahead, by 2030. He called it their rightful position when asked about whether they were potentially planning to acquire IDBI Bank. Vaswani kept his cards close to his chest. He, however, said that they have never shied away from M&A and not shying away from it even today. That's not all. Vaswani also told me that the bank has used the RBI's restriction as an opportunity to try and leapfrog and make systems more resilient.
Kotak is a great brand. Kotak is a great platform. There's no reason why Kotak shouldn't be within the top 3 private sector banks. And I'm talking not only of the bank, I'm talking about our subs. Where our subs are within the top 5, why we can't be within the top 3, or just full stop, be within the top 5, right? Growth and transforming for scale is exactly what this mandate is about. It's not unusual for deposits to drop off in the first quarter because you normally end March on a pretty high. Frankly, I've worked in the US, I've worked in the UK, and deposits have pretty much stayed flat as a percentage of GDP and continued to grow all over the years, right? And there, obviously the participation in the capital markets is much, much, much higher than in India. So this notion that suddenly, there's going to be a complete dearth of deposits and everybody's going to invest in the capital markets,
Overdone?
I think it's overdone, right? And I think that, look, as long as there's an economy, as long as there's expenditure, as long as there's businesses, deposits will continue to kind of grow. Is the customer becoming more sophisticated and savvy? Absolutely. And that's bound to happen, right? But I don't see this situation as suddenly deposits are going to suddenly disappear. We are not shying away from M&A even today. We look at every single opportunity that comes along, and as and when the opportunity comes along and presents ourselves, we will evaluate it.
But does it still make strategic sense, IDBI Bank specifically?
I don't think it's hot and cooking right now. So I think when the time comes and, there's talk about doing something, we will definitely look at it and evaluate.
The transaction is still in, it's quite literally, from all indications from the government, it's kind of moving forward at this point in time. So does Kotak intend to take it forward or not?
When the government tells us and the RBI tells us, we'll definitely have a look at it.
And you can watch that exclusive interview with Kotak Mahindra Bank's MD and CEO Ashok Vaswani. Tune in at 7:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. Now, the Reserve Bank has flagged irregularities in the processing of loans against gold jewellery by several banks and NBFCs. The regulator has given lenders 3 months to adhere to the guidelines. The RBI said that non-compliance could attract supervisory action. Abhishek is standing by with more details. Abhishek, what irregularities has the central bank found?
Well, it's a surprise factor that, a secured product like gold financing has come under RBI radar with reference to deficiencies that have been identified in select supervised entities or players that are there in the gold financing space. So comprehensive review has been advised for all, which is a period of 3 months which has been given to them. On a review and on-site examination of select supervisory entities, adherence of prudential guidelines as well as practices with regard to loans against jewelry as well as gold ornaments, RBI has pointed out to several irregular practices. Some of them are shortcomings in the use of third parties for sourcing and appraisal of loans. Valuation of loans or gold is being done without the presence of customer. Inadequate due diligence and lack of end use of monitoring of the gold loans that have been handed out to customers. Inadequate, also transparency during auctioning of gold ornaments and jewelry on default of customer is an area of issue. Weakness in monitoring the LTV. Now, LTV is loan to value ratio, which is typically in the range of 65% to 75%. There also weaknesses have been seen, and incorrect application of risk weights, etc. have been found by RBI. So RBI has given these players 3 months to comply with the norms and get their act in place. Now, Citi has written a note wherein they have mentioned that gold loan share of lenders are in terms of banks, Federal Bank 12.2%, Bank of Baroda 4.6%, RBL and SBI at around 3.5 to 3.8%. In terms of NBFCs, Muthoot Finance has a large share, 82.5% of the book is in gold financing, Manappuram about 52.6%, IIFL Finance about 21.2%, and SBFC amongst the top players being in NBFC space amongst the gold financers. Back to you.
Abhishek, many thanks for joining us. Oil marketing companies have hiked the price of commercial LPG cylinders. Starting today, the price of a 19 kg cylinder has been increased by over 48 rupees. The cost of a 5 kg variant has been hiked by 12 rupees. However, there has been no change in the domestic LPG cylinder rates. Shares of SpiceJet and Indigo up in early trade after jet fuel prices were cut for the second straight month in October. Prices of aviation turbine fuel were slashed by 6%, which roughly amounts to 6,000 rupees a kilolitre. Prices in Delhi were reduced to 87,597 rupees kilolitre, while prices in Mumbai were reduced to 81,866 per kilolitre. Here's the latest from the auto sector, where two-wheeler makers Bajaj Auto and TVS Motors have seen sales accelerate in September to beat expectations. The month has also seen Bajaj close the gap with Ola Electric in the EV race. However, car sales a mixed bag, with Tata Motors posting a 9% decline and M&M's SUV sales up 24%. Vinny is here with more. Vinny.
So yes, among the four-wheelers, let's start with that since Tata Motors just came out with its numbers. So talking about M&M, the auto segment, that did quite well, above estimates. They managed to see a growth also of 16% on a year-on-year basis, month-on-month basis. Also, they managed to see a good growth. We also had Ashok Leyland as well as Eicher VECV, which reported their September sales numbers. They were in line with what the street was expecting. So Ashok Leyland, bit of a decline in terms of on a year-on-year basis, 5% decline, but month-on-month basis, they've managed to see a strong growth in terms of momentum. They've seen a 29% growth on a month-on-month basis, and VECV on a month-on-month basis also has seen a double-digit growth. So surely strong momentum seems to be picking up in all these companies. But Tata Motors, that's coming at a bit of a miss that we're seeing this time around, a large miss in terms of what we had versus the estimates. So what Tata Motors reported is 69,694 units. Total sales is what I'm talking about. And our expectations was that somewhere around 80,000. Now the management also came in with a commentary saying that slow consumer demand as well as seasonal factors was something that impacted the sales of the company going in this month. But going forward, festive season is there, so they're expecting a pickup in demand. Let's move on, talk about the two-wheeler names, Bajaj Auto as well as TVS Motors. They managed to report good numbers, both above the estimates. Two-wheeler sales, mainly good monsoon is something that is supporting the sales, as well as festive demand is expected to see a bit of a pickup. We spoke to the management of Bajaj Auto earlier in the morning. They also said that they expect this growth to continue even in the month of October, as well as their EV side or the green portfolio that now accounts to 40% of their domestic revenue. So that's an interesting factor coming in there. TVS Motors also similar strong growth trends both on a year-on-year basis as well as on a month-on-month basis. Lastly, the tractor side, farm equipment. So M&M tractors, that also managed to see an inline number this time in September, while Escorts also managed to see a decent number. The trend coming in from both these companies is that the second half of FY25 for tractors and farm equipment is expected to be better.
Vinny, many thanks. Up next, the Supreme Court reserves its judgment on pleas challenging the weaponization of bulldozer demolitions by state governments. That and more when we get back. The Supreme Court has reserved the judgment on pleas challenging the weaponization of bulldozer demolition by state governments. The apex court had hinted at laying down guidelines that will be applicable to all communities across India. Ashmit is standing by with more. Ashmit, take us to the key observations made by the Supreme Court, and when can we expect now further action?
Well, after nearly a 2-hour-long hearing, the Apex Court reserving its judgment, clarifying that it will be issuing guidelines that will be applicable across the country to across all states as well as all religious communities. The Apex Court was particular in pointing that out. All of this on the back of various petitions being filed before the Apex Court, pointing out cases of quote-unquote bulldozer justice being followed in states such as UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. And these are some of the concerns that were highlighted by the petitioners, that there is a weaponization of municipal laws, that demolitions are being done in a way so as to target people who have been accused of crimes such as rioting, that there is no remedy, there is no legal remedy made available to these persons, and that this is being even brandished by politicians as a case of swift justice. Now, the Apex Court made various observations. Number one, the Supreme Court observed that it is secular in nature. The guidelines that will be issued will be applicable to all religious communities, and also pointing out that demolitions should not be used in a way to target people who have been accused of a crime, going in to say that demolition should only be done in cases where there is, in fact, a violation of municipal laws. And even in that situation, there needs to be due process followed, which is issuance of, number one, a notice, and then subsequently making a suggestion that even in such cases, after the demolition order has been passed, a 10 to 15-day window is provided to the accused. Now, what's important here is that the Solicitor General defending the states of UP, Rajasthan, as well as MP, sought to defend, saying that it should not be colored, this demolition should not be colored as a religiously motivated exercise, but rather the apex court should be careful that the guidelines should not in any way take away powers of the municipal board, of the municipal administrative bodies, and also importantly, should not take away, should not give undue benefits to what the Solicitor General called were serial encroachers. So that's the word of caution coming in from the Solicitor General. All eyes now on the apex court as it gets set to deliver its judgment.
All right, Ashmit, appreciate you joining us. Well, it is the final phase of the assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir. 40 constituencies are voting across the Union Territory amidst protests over the killing of Hezbollah's leader by Israel. 415 candidates in the fray, and results will be declared on the 8th of October. Ishan Wani reports from Baramulla.
Brisk voting is being witnessed in the third and last phase of J&K Assembly elections, which is witnessing a tight contest between National Conference and Congress combined with the BJP and other political parties. Many of them are independents and several of them are also backed by Jamaat-e-Islami. Now, Jamaat-e-Islami is also fighting these elections and they are trying to push in the independents as well. Then you have the factor of Engineer Rashid, who has been given an anticipatory bail and is trying to ensure that his candidates also win on these particular seats, because this has been one of those places from where Engineer Rashid became an MP from, and he received an overwhelming vote and he was able to defeat Umar Abdullah of the National Conference. But these elections are different given the fact that after 10 years these polls are happening and people want their representation and their words to be heard and their representation from the local MLAs to be done. And that's why today we are witnessing brisk polling happening in parts of Kashmir Valley. In Jammu, the BJP is trying to retain those seats which they have won year after year, precisely after an Hindutva wave came in and they were able to upset the Congress on those seats and retain them for several years now. It will be an interesting and tight contest because on the 8th of October there will be results coming out, who will be the kingmaker and who will be in a position to form any government. Whether anyone will have numbers, the time will tell, but a tough competition is happening between political parties in the valley, but people are trying to vote on several issues. What we have seen on the ground, people want jobs, development, statehood to be restored, and there are other promises also which political parties have made, where the people are now choosing clearly those political parties who they believe can do better work for them.
Well, that is the latest there from Jammu and Kashmir, the final phase of voting. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here on CNBC-TV18. Stay tuned. We're back in a minute with more.